Hi Satyam, how are you?
Yeah, thank you, Ashit. Pleasure meeting you all.
And it's going to be a pleasure listening to you after my moderation here. I'll have some time that no more talking and listening a little bit, and you taking over as a moderator. I would like to introduce Satyam. Satyam has been a veteran in the BFSI industries. He has worked with many MNC and Indian banks. He has understood how the ecosystem in the banking sector works, and he's the founder and the CEO of the Loan Tap, which is a very innovative product which is providing services to the various people who wants loans. And he has been in the industry for at least more than 2 decades. So Satyam, over to you. You can then bring in your panel in, and I will go on the backstage.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ashit, for such a generous introduction. Good evening, everyone, and it's towards the we are coming towards the close of last 3 days of such a thoughtful and profound sessions, starting from none other than likes of Mr. Neil Kenny's as we went from session to session to session. So yeah, the task is large to keep everyone hooked, but at the same time, let me also convey that we have got an amazing mix of panelists as we introduce them one by one, and we are looking forward to very interesting discussions covering fintech, covering neo-banking, covering stuffs like how we are bringing in the affordability in the entire loan ecosystem, both about access to credit, access to unlocking their own capital, unlocking people's own potentials, and also about the whole cost of credit as well as the last mile delivery. So pretty wide range of discussions, starting from impact to essential segments like health and all, and also about the regulatory environment, which is allowing most of it to happen in India, and much evolved than what we are currently seeing in a global ecosystem. So we would want to welcome our panelists one by one, and I'll start with Mr. Prem Kumar, CEO of SnapBeach. And would request the desk to help us with bringing him to live. Mr. Prem Kumar. Hi. I'll just take a minute to introduce Mr. Prem Kumar. He has been building an amazing company called SnapBiz, and while we were starting about the whole AGM, we did listen to Mr. Neil Kenny saying that what are we doing to bring the old economy companies into the digital era? Are they going to be left out? So, what are the initiatives of SnapBiz is essentially they are digitizing the whole the old retail world. Yeah, and they're making it modern format retail, like a mall experience. And so I think more and more from Mr. Prem Kumar himself as he introduces himself and his business to all of us. Yes, Mr. Prem.
Thank you very much, Satyam. Thank you. So I've had the privilege of being a corporate executive, CEO, and who turned an entrepreneur, worked across the globe, and very passionate about the small merchant space. We do see the small merchants as sort of a national infrastructure which services the 1.3 billion population of this country, where which is very diverse from socioeconomic classifications as well as ethnic diversity, and where probably the median basket size is about 200 rupees and has 5 6 items in it. So we look at this as an infrastructure. What we do at SnapBiz is sort of convert these stores into smart stores and digitally, financially, and integrate them with the ecosystem at large, both on the demand side and supply side, thereby transforming them. But more important than transforming the independent store, it is about integrating them digitally, financially, and more so with the ecosystem at large, which is the brands, the distributors, wholesalers, and so on and so forth, thereby facilitating them to deliver greater value to their customers and capture greater value from the supply side. So that's at a pretty high level what we do. It's very passionate about this journey, and the COVID has taught us a few lessons in terms of how resilient this community is, in spite of the terrible pressures that they have had to go through, and how resilient they have been, and how purposeful they have been in terms of servicing the customers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prem. Now, we would like to welcome on stage Mr. Ankit Ranjan. So, from a data to the whole data-led journey as far as the fintech or a neo-banking itself is concerned. And Ankit is co-founder at SignG, doing a great service to the entire banking ecosystem in terms of structuring those both the data validation as well as also ensuring the journey of the customer in a digital economy. So yeah, over to Ankit to give a more on himself as well as on SignG.
Yeah, hi Satyam. Thank you so much for the introduction, of which only part I heard. But what SignG does is that it helps our banking partners bring delightful user experiences and truly usher in Amazon and Netflix like banking paradigm. Today, we of course work with almost all large financial institutions in India and help them in their mission critical systems, mission critical processes like customer onboarding. And we have processed over 25 million consumers through products across our customers. And recently, we have also started working with customers in Middle East and US. Personally, I, before doing SignG, used to run another startup in data analytics. Again, primarily financial services. And my when I passed out of college, my first job was also in data analytics. So my entire background has been in data analytics, largely working with financial services.
Thank you very much, Ankit. So from data to handling the data journey, and now let's move and welcome Dr. Neeraj Seth to the panel. What is very interesting is that what we have been seeing in the larger ecosystem today, lots of stress into the middle and a lower income category comes from unplanned expenses, unplanned events, and nothing could be more unplanned than a medical emergency. I think OCare has been helping people both unlocking their own assets, at the same time also providing more and more access to capital, access to credit, or access to finance when it is needed the most, and when you need it actually on tap. So when you don't know where to go because all you are focused in on a particular medical situation which needs to be taken care, and then you just look forward to someone to come like an angel and support you in the whole financial part of the closure of that relationship with the hospital and the chain. So over to Dr. Neeraj about yourself and about OCare both.
Thanks, Satyam. Good evening, everyone. So, OCare, as Satyam mentioned, is a unique product that we are building with a focus on actually helping customers all along their health and finance journey. Because as we understand, health is an unprecedented event for everyone. And at that time, the most important thing that a person really needs to do is focus on getting better and not worry about, where the money will come in to take care of the cost, and especially not only the individuals but also their family members. So what OCare does is essentially helps them in this journey, provides for finance all along their journey through various pockets, by underwriting some products, by partnering some products. And along with that, the most important thing that OCare also does is helps them with recommendation all along their health journey. Then that is something that is very, very important, because being a doctor myself and having a team of doctors working and building OCare, what we realized is that a person at the end of the day, when it comes to health, also needs guidance and support at every stage on what he needs to do. There are various access points available where he can avail various for him to understand what he necessarily needs to do is something that somebody needs to guide there, and that's where OCare comes in. personally speaking about me, I'm a doctor, was into clinical practice both in India and the UK. Exited my practice, got into the startup space, and started off as an investor, invested in a few companies, and then started building OK, realizing that this is a large gap and which needs to be bridged. So I have been busy building OK since the last 5 years now.
Amazing. Thank you, Neeraj, and we look forward to hear more from you as we go on to the session. Now, so from essential to from emergency need to essential. That's where we'll move with the introduction of the fourth panelist to the session. And so we have with us Chaitanya Kampani, who is Deputy CEO at Leaf Fintech. They have been working on providing affordable credit solutions to the missing group where the credit, even in a basic categories like a housing loan, is not being available. So Leaf Fintech is engaged in both the discovery part of the loans or access to finance, at the same time also trying to bringing the distribution part. So the organizations or the lending institutions also to the pockets which is not currently served by them in a digital manner. So that's what Chaitanya and Leaf Fintech are up to. More from Chaitanya on this. Yeah, Chaitanya, over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the introduction, Satyam. So, I think Leaf Fintech is obviously focused on, enabling housing for all and ensuring that, across India, we are able to help potential homeowners, complete their dream of getting their home. And, specifically mortgages, right, globally is one of the least digitized pieces of lending, right? I think a lot of the unsecured lending is very digitized now. I think it's very easily accessible, but the access to mortgages is still very physical. I think there's a set of barriers that the legacy of the business has created. So when you're dealing with mortgages, you deal with zoning laws, jurisdictions, legal, claim, valuation, all of these various complexities. And I think technology can play a real role in really encapsulating all this complexity and giving a user a seamless experience while availing a home loan. So that's what Leaf Fintech is really focused on doing, and we're working towards building that, and then using that as the start for a journey for a customer to thereafter be given a lot of other financial products across their life cycle, because the home loan is typically a long tenor, 10 to 15 year sort of a product for them. So personally, my background before I co-founded Leaf Fintech was actually, I was in investment banking, and before that, I had my own startup focused on, algo trading on, the exchanges in India. So I've been very driven towards, technology and using technology to automate things and solve problems. And I felt that housing was a very large and complex problem that I think technology could address, and that's why we started off with Leaf Fintech about 3 years ago.
Amazing. So, pleasure having you all on the panel. And so let's start. If we look at the whole new banking and lending ecosystem or providing credit, one of the key things that remains unchanged is that credit in itself is always an enabler. It is not an end product. So end product is always the uses of it, whether to buy a product, buy an experience, or fuel a business growth, whether it's as a working capital or a purchase finance, the way we are going to look at it. So something which is an enabler, which is a functionality. We have also now started calling about that credit is a feature. So whether we call it as an embedded finance, whether we call it as a marketplace lending, whether we call it as a purchase finance, buy now, pay later, ultimately you are buying something else. So each of the consumers, everyone is consuming something else, a product or a service, and as a finance, we all are only enabling it. So having said that, this is how there's a feature, and we need to put more and more, whether user experience is concerned, whether the cost reduction is concerned, whether the turnaround time improvement is concerned, and all of stuff. what we see as a basic tenet of doing any of it is the data itself, and how the data has been stacking over a period of time historically, and now how the data are stacked in a different forms, the ways and means where it can be consumed by the lending institutions, it can be consumed by the partnering institutions or a product provider or a service provider. So looking at the data itself, which is where a lot of job is being done by SnapBridge, and particularly into the impact segment for small retailers, kirana stores, and other outlets. So let's hear from SnapBridge founder, Mr. Prem Kumar, in terms of how the whole data journey is evolving, and also then we'll go back on the same question with each of the panels, that are they seeing the data rich enough to take a decision? Do we see a large ecosystem emerging in a retail lending side or a new banking side, only based on a data-led journey, which everyone is looking forward to do that then as a new form of collateral, flow-based lending, whatever. I mean, there's lots of stuff which is which is happening in different parts of the economy. Many of it is a government-led initiative. Many of it is also a private-led initiative. So let's look at the data itself. Are we getting the kind of or a class of a data where you can build a neobank, or whether you can build a fintech or a lending fintech? So let's go one by one, and Ms. Prem, we can start from you.
Yeah, thanks, Satyam. I think there are two very important points that you made, right? One is about finance or money being a fuel to an ecosystem, and rather than a transactional thing with a customer, right? And hence what we are really seeing is that a deep understanding and customization of products and services to an ecosystem is an imperative for it being more and more meaningful, right? I had built a company in Eastern Europe where there was a bank A which was market leader in the vertical space, with almost about 28% share of the vertical, whereas Bank B was a larger bank with a sub 5% share of the vertical. But by looking at data, and this is a very data dark Eastern European market, right? So where books itself mean very little in any case. And the complexities are even more because the supply side is dollar denominated, the consumption side is ruble denominated. So every small merchant is a forex dealer effectively. So the complexities are, and the supply side is all cash and the demand side is all credit. So it's a double whammy on working capital. But it's all taking a very ecosystem approach and understanding the pain points of that ecosystem, because every industry has its own idiosyncrasies and its typicalities. And like Dr. Neeraj will say that health is very different from grocery, so is grocery equally different from health. So it is about taking a very data-centric, ecosystem-centric approach, and pivoting from products to very customer-centric journeys, right? I mean, how do you embed yourself to be part of a journey along the flow of goods from the marketeer to the consumer, and integrate yourself through this whole journey and be the fuel in terms of financial services, appropriate financial service products? All of this can be done very efficiently and effectively through data. Unfortunately, the problem with data is that no one player has a holistic perspective about a store. Take, for example, a grocery store, right? No supplier is more than 2-3% of the store. What he best knows is what he does with the store, but what he does not know is what is happening in the store, or what is he missing out on, right? So data becomes a very, very critical driving tool for entire decision making. And however, the biggest challenge in one is, of course, you need to get holistic data, right? So, for example, Nielsen is an investor in our company, and we look at data in a far larger scale on a national basis, right? So, the key point is, how do you get the right kind of data? But why should you get the data? So, and that's the bigger challenge here, right? See, like, for example, if a merchant is willing to share his data, do you have a dynamic pricing system which allows him to accrue instantaneous benefits for the data he shares versus some very long-term benefits? So I think the big change that is going to be happening is in terms of connecting the dots in terms of data, having more holistic data, but more importantly, rewarding data sharing fairly immediately, the here and now reward of data sharing rather than the long-term wait for data sharing, right? But data is likely to make a huge difference And for good reasons, right? Say, for example, the cost of capital could be reduced. There could be a 2-3% delta in the cost of capital to the merchant, right? Or say the cost of risk could be reduced because you're looking at data in a completely different fashion. And this could be completely not traditional data of books, etc. But like, for example, has the share in shop of a particular brand increased or decreased? Has the stock turnover ratio changed? Or has the footfall increased or decreased? Has the median basket gone up or gone down, right? Innumerable things like that could be done. And that could make a huge difference for both the lender and the borrower, right? And could deliver customized products and services, very timely interventions is definitely a possibility. One has to work towards more is to reward that. The marketeers of FMCG goods and things like that have learned to reward it, right? They give you instantaneous coupon to the consumer. If you bought X, you get Y, right? But in the financial service space, I think that the willingness to look at it and reward it instantaneously is going to be a key driver to change, is what I do believe.
Yeah, amazing stuff that comes out of these conversations, Mr. Prem. So, rewarding, what we have seen rewarding happening is, yes, payment ecosystem has seen lots of cashback, lots of rewards and all, and the result is everywhere. The result is everywhere in the sense of the UPI transactions running in billion, 2 billion, leaping to 3 billion, So yeah, we have seen those kind of stuff happening when once you reward the right environment or the right user or consumer of it. So that's an interesting stuff. And what also brings to the along with it is that yes, the quality of data should enable reduction in cost of capital. Unfortunately, I think see it happening too much. So though we have been seeing lots of small loans, lots of loans on end-to-end digital environment. However, the rewarding of this structure has not happened. But let me tell everyone on this forum. So what government has been doing is that government have been sensing each of these opportunities, and particularly it has been sensed in the backdrop of COVID-related, shrinkage of credit, particularly into the MSME segment and the retail non-personal loan segment, where lots of shrinkages has happened in the credit, which was very against the basic hypothesis of providing more and more credit through TLTROs and all other windows, so that the economy picks up. And the government has created its own index of ease of business, where the banks or PSUs are getting measured. Yeah, and one of the criterias there is something like a co-lend. So co-lend comes as a very refreshing change to an earlier ecosystem where the money has to come from a larger institution to a smaller institution to, or a medium institution to a smaller institution, and from there to a retailer or a principal and the entire value chain. So I think what co-lend brings very unique, or the whole neo banking brings very unique is immediate tapping of the capital on from the banking ecosystem, which is still at a which has access to a large pool of low-cost fund, both because the government ecosystem and the design of the banking in India itself. So I think
if I may just add to what you said, Satyam, right? It goes beyond the quantity and quality of data. It is the perspective with which the data is looked at, right? And financial services tends to look at data from a financial service perspective, but there are innumerable surrogate ways of understanding the customer much better, or equally well, if not better. Just like, has the footfall increased, has the basket profile changed? So there is a great opportunity in pivoting or exploring multiple perspectives of looking at data to get those insights about the financial health of the business or the customer.
No, amazing. So exactly. So it will take some time because the financial ecosystem has to catch up, or the traditional banking has to catch up with a proof of concept. And what a lot of fintechs, including the likes of LoanTap and other entities working in the MSME domains and all, what they have done is that over the last 5 to 6 years, they have demonstrated their ability to hold on to a particular cost ratios, a particular loss ratios, and all, and also the other 2 points which you mentioned is equally important, which is about cost of operations. Collecting the same data was a tedious task. Getting the same data in a on tap brings down the cost of operation dramatically for the institution. So what we have seen now that even as institutions with a smaller balance sheets, so sub 1,000 crore balance sheets running at an operating cost level of less than 5%, vis-a-vis when you actually were achieving it at a scale of like 40,000, 50,000 crore kind of a loan book. So that kind of efficiency is today being seen at a scale of a sub 1,000 crore loan book level, which is an amazing stuff, which of course allows you to pass on those benefits to the customers. And again, most of the data which we are talking in the modern trade is about the current data. It is not like a historic data. So even if you are picking up an income tax report, even if you are taking a bank statement and all, it is always a historic data. So mirroring a historic data for a future performance is always an assumption. So the large part of the assumption. So now mating the same data along with the current data through GSTNR network, through other purchase finance and a trade network and all, allows you to mirror it in a current environment, and that allows a better control over the likely credit losses in a real time basis. So both of it, all three of it is given for. What we have seen is that we have seen cost coming down, Mr. Prem. So we have seen like MSME lending cost coming down from by the fintech from typically about 30 to 36% to about 17 to 20% now that many of the MSMEs are running, where you are getting a slightly deeper data, as I mentioned about the GST data and all. So 10% reduction, and you should not be looking forward to the same steep curve because it was at an arbitrarily high level on assumed losses. So we are seeing a significant reduction in the last 2 to 3 years, and most of it has been driven by the co-lending ecosystem, which has been created both by the institutions like SIDBI, the banks, and rightly nudged by the government and the regulatory ecosystem. So let's see how the ecosystem evolves. But just looking at the data itself, so Chaitanya, how do we look the data in the affordable housing segment? Are we getting the similar set of similar quality of data? Are there more challenges? Are we waiting for the more stuffs to come out there? So what is the kind of a data that you are seeing in affordable housing?
So, typically in affordable housing, the customers are usually about 60 to 70% of our customers are new to credit, right? So the traditional credit data in terms of a bureau score or something is actually not very enlightening, or, not available in many cases. While we look at various alternative sources of data, to try and do a assessment of the customer, I think given that in affordable housing you do need to also verify the property itself, and very little data is available around the property right there. I think you have no idea of what sort of property valuations would be going on in a particular region. If you could get access to registrar offices where you can get that sort of data, I think that will shed some light. There is, again, with regards to legal and title claims on properties, there is no central registry. Karnataka last year started, the Bangalore Municipal Corporation, I think, had started program where the khata was made available digitally. But I think, rest of India has not really gone on. I think digitization of land records was something that we've been speaking about for some time, but it's a fairly complex exercise. So typically, a physical verification is still required in a lot of these affordable home loans. And by virtue of that, I think, then it makes sense to therefore physically verify income source, etc. as well, since you're going to make the effort of physical verification anyways. So I think, data is not available very easily to underwrite these customers just on a purely digital journey today. But I think, the framework is in place to maybe in the next 3 to 5 years try to do a fully digital mortgage in India, right? And I think that kind of mirrors some of the other global counterparts as well. Even the United States currently does not have the capability to do a fully digital mortgage, right? It's a very similar system there. But I think, because of the evolution of fintech and the ecosystem around it, I think both governments, regulators, as well as financiers are all working towards trying to make this journey possible.
Yeah, amazing. So, so what we gathered so far in the secure lending ecosystem or housing loan ecosystem is that if we are what we are sensing is that the flow is available, right? So the flow of information, flow of data, those parts has been resolved. And also, if we are breaking into two stages, one is the income assessment. Large part of the income assessment part of which we popularly call sanction stage. Large part, there is a significant part of the data and all is available. But when it comes to mortgage creation, collateral underestimation, collateral estimation and creating the security around the collateral itself is concerned, that part is largely
data is absent in that part.
And at the same time, as you mentioned, that over a period of 3 to 5 years, we are all expecting it to change dramatically again as more and more states are digitizing the land records, property records, and all. And as you said about Karnataka, we also see Maharashtra also opening up typically their registrar ecosystem through their IGR network and all, where recent transactions and all could be tapped, or I think it's on the anvil in another.
It's on the anvil, yes.
Or so we can expect that to happen. So the current part of it we have solved, and a lot to be done there. That's what. We pick up from there on the data side of the relationship in Affordable. So talking of the data itself, Ankit, you have been handling all kind of a data in different domain, validation, verification, including the regulatory also. So something like a basics like a KYCs and all kind of stuff. So how have you seen the data environment itself changing in the last 4-5 years that you have been working on in the Indian ecosystem?
I think thank you, Satyam, for that question. In fact, all of you were discussing about data, its flow, its quality, and I think what we always think about is about privacy, about compliance around data, because yes, there is one problem that everyone is looking to solve is that do I have the right data and does it tell me whether I should give a loan? But I think because we are in a regulated industry, somebody needs to ask the question, are you collecting this data in a compliant way? Are you collecting in a way that it's meeting the norms of privacy? And then are all parties who are dealing with the data dealing with it in proper way? So I think the answer to that is that I think there's been a lot of gray zone, especially in lending by non-banking institutions in the country, which is, I think, fair, because I think things are just growing too fast for the ecosystem, for the regulator to really take any cognizance of what's happening. But I think off late, as you would have been seeing, the regulator is getting more and more active. And I think given that most of this data is digital, we have the technology today to be able to trace the data, to be able to apply some of this regulatory compliance on the data. And what we are seeing is that banks are working towards building like a core regulatory KYC framework within them. And if they are working with fintech partners, when they're working with neobanks, when they're maybe even working with non-lending institutions hosting as somebody said, lending as a feature, the core regulatory part would stay within the bank, would be done by the bank. All the audit trails would stay with the bank, so that tomorrow when they have to be answerable to the regulator, they have all that data residing. The friction, there will be a little bit of friction maybe for these integrating parties, that today maybe they were being able to do things exactly as they thought. That, for example, if I thought, okay, I just need to collect these two pieces of data and I'll give a loan, maybe the bank will say, no, I need to also identify this person. I need a strong KYC proof, or I need a strong proof of consent that while you have given this person a loan, but has he consented to giving you the KYC information? So I think those things will be put in place over the, I think, the next couple of years. I think regulators also working very hard there. And I think there will also be good use of some DLT technology, whether, I mean, crypto becomes a very risky word, but some use of blockchain where multiple parties can then validate that, you know, the data is valid even though they are not getting the data. So I think that is how we see this ecosystem evolving. There will be a lot happening, and the great thing about this technology would be that this will be first in the world. So unlike other geographies, India has leapfrogged digitization of data. And I think while Chaitanya was saying US is still behind, but actually now it's very obvious they are behind. I mean, now it's no longer about saying, you know, even US is behind. I mean, in financial services, it's like, of course, India is ahead and India should be ahead, and anything you talk about, US will be behind us. So we will see that once this technology emerges, this will also actually become the way global embedded finance will work. The way UPI has created the framework for global payment to follow. Similarly, we'll see that embedded finance in a regulatory and compliant way will start from India. India will be the bedrock where this, again, technology will get created and then kind of exported outside India.
Amazing validation of the work that is happening in India, and both on the data space, creating the digital railroads, and also the application side of the data in the financial system. Thanks, Ankit. It's pretty helpful. So everyone, you can keep on posting the Q&A. The audience will keep on picking it up from time to time. So we'll go back to Dr. Neeraj to understand, one of the greatest stuff which he is bringing, unlocking your own capital. So he is allowing access to your own capital in most of the time, which we miss out while we are in a hurry or while our mind is in somewhere else. So that's where we'll listen to him, how he is enabling it, and then we'll again move to the next part of the discussion. Yes, Dr. Neeraj.
Thanks, Satyam. Just taking a cue from what everyone said about data, right? I mean, we are in a space where data is still at a very, very nascent stage when it comes to healthcare. And while getting data will allow various platforms, various businesses to actually, offer better products, better services. One of the things that data also can do, and that is largely for institutions, is about reducing the cost, the pricing of various products, and underwriting better risk. I mean, that is something that will really, bring in the whole point on embedded finance, which Ankit mentioned, and which will allow the ecosystem to actually, get it out and offer it to the customers. Taking a cue on health fintech, if I talk about, one of the things that we've realized is that when an unprecedented health episode happens, at that time, the biggest challenge that customers are facing is, of course, access to capital and access to structured products, but also unlocking their own assets. Like, people have savings in various different forms, starting from insurance savings to postal savings to PPF and provident fund savings, etc. But the digital journeys of unlocking that capital for that health episode, which is again a time bound event, and to be able to get access and solve the problem is something that is a big need. And people, with the lack of option currently available to them, then end up going for all the unstructured sources of capital to be able to meet their cost. And what really digital and data both can solve is giving means to the customer. I'll give a simple example, right? Life insurance traditionally in India has been sold as a savings product more than a insurance protection product. People have been saving, paying premiums in life insurance product. There is a large capital pool available there. Loan against life insurance has been a product available with institutions, starting from banks to insurance companies to even non-bank companies. But for a customer to avail any kind of finance against his own life insurance product itself is a huge cumbersome process. And imagine he trying to do that when it comes to a health episode, right? I mean, that becomes even a bigger challenge. So that's one of the leg. I mean, if a company can actually just access the customer's life insurance record through an e-insurance account, get an idea of what his savings are, or what they call it, the maturity benefit or surrender value is, and then mark a lien with an NOC from an insurer and give him an instant credit. I mean, at the end of the day, what is happening is customer is getting capital from one pocket to the other, but it is actually solving one particular need for that time bound event. Similarly, I mean, there are other capital pools which really needs to be looked at. Provident fund, for example. I mean, people can borrow only 25% for medical needs from provident fund. But what if somebody needs a larger sum? Can there be can there be something that can be created in some of a digital journey to just mark a lien to your UAN and access capital? And that is something that institutions and fintechs can enable larger institutions to do, who are sitting on the capital available with them to lend. So what I'm trying to tell here is the ecosystem, the way it is building, all the stakeholders of a ecosystem, everyone's working and moving on that journey. Essentially, where it leads to is a vertical focused, customer need driven approach. And that is where embedded finance comes in, right? If I have a need and I have A, B, C, D asset available with me, if I want to monetize, can data and digital really help me do that? And can technology enable a company to provide me that service? I'm talking of health because that's where we come in. But of course, I mean, there are other sectors which can work across this.
Amazing. So, great insight. And when we look at a health or health-related emergency, we have seen a considerable number of deaths in India, and coming out of the expenses which has been uh, unplanned, and which has come from the health-related emergency. So very critical for the economy to have this kind of a support. Very critical for people to have this kind of an access to capital when in dire situations. So just to before we go back to the panel about the whole consumer aspect of it, in terms of how the consumers are benefiting in this entire fintech and a neo banking environment. But just to also engage or bring in audience at this point of time, I have seen two questions there on the dashboard. Both are extremely interesting. So the first one came about 10 to 15 minutes back, and it was about the use case of AI and ML in lending or in fintech. So I would say I would bring it. It was about bringing the cost down. Has it brought the cost down? The answer is the cost has come down first significantly because of automation. So the first round of digitization was around the automation of the processes, around the automation of the customer journey, around removing the frictions or touch points as far as the customer itself was concerned. If you want to see the validation of these use cases and all, then you will see that the largest consumer finance companies, their per employee revenue and smaller fintechs per employee revenue are at par. And this is not by doing the corporate lending, this is by doing a retail lending. So, retail to retail lending, you can compare. In a corporate lending, where the comparison will be very difficult, but in a retail to retail lending, you can compare. So, as I was saying, that if you have a book difference of almost like 40 times, 50 times book size difference, and so is the revenue difference. At the same time, if you are able to keep a similar revenue per employee, yes, there is a significant amount of technology edge which has brought this kind of advantages, and which is getting passed on to the consumer. As I said, that the cost of lending in the MSME has dropped from 36% to 19 to 24%. The cost of lending in the consumer space or a larger personal loan space has come down from typically about 24% to about 14 to 16, 18%. Even in the areas which is not traditionally served by the banking ecosystem. So it's not about Bombay and Delhi. It is also about the far-flung areas like Ernakulam. It's about areas like Jammu and Siliguri, where these costs have come down. So there has been a significant amount of cost reduction in this ecosystem. The second part is AI and ML is also, it's about the trust, right? So in the beginning, has it started reducing the cost in terms of the credit losses and all? The answer is yes. So, and that is where the first session or the first part of this session was about the data quality and keeping it into a design where it could be used for underwriting. So yeah, this is both the AI ML applications. Has it started benefiting the industry? Yes. Has it started benefiting the consumer? Answer is yes again. So yes, the application part, when it started, technology is always seen as a in a near term, it's seen as like over used term, and in a long term, you always feel that, hey, technology has done far more than what it was set out to do, and that's the moment in fintech also. So that was the first question around the AI and ML in the lending. The second question in AI and ML is around, has the processes been tested in the court? The answer is again yes. Okay. So the financial institution after institutions are going to court, taking the arbitration route, taking the court route to create summon, to create awards in favor of them, delivering it again digitally to the customer and collecting it. It has improved the collection efficiency in unsecured space dramatically. So if earlier collection scores in unsecured space used to be like 25% and all, post 90 days, now that's running it around 42% or 50% because of this route. So yes, both the questions, we are seeing a great deal of benefit because of the whole tech stacks that is getting created, both on application side of it and underwriting side of it. So having said that, again, I'll the two questions which we thought that will bring in from the audience, and at the same time now, let's move again back to we'll start from Chaitanya this time to see to it that, hey, Chaitanya, so for consumers, from a fintech institution point of view, from the overall larger corporate build-up point of view and all, it looks a very great things to do everything tech based, everything this stuff and all stuff. Are the consumer really seeing the benefit? Is it really reaching out to them? Because the way we understand a credit is that credit for a consumer has a three leg. One is availability. It should be available. The second part, it should be coming at a right cost, because the credit is available from a money lender also, but it should be available at a right cost. So is it coming at a right cost to the larger set of a consumer? And the third, is it also timely? So again, there is a time value of a money. So is the tech stack and all, is it reaching to that level where it is benefiting consumer around these three arms of availability, about right cost, and also timeliness of it?
Yeah. I think that's a very, very good framework to put it in. I think the first being availability, right? Specifically in housing finance, because of the challenges I outlined beforehand, I think for an affordable housing customer and for an institution, right? The question always remains that, will this customer be eligible, right? Not just based on income, but based on his property also, right? So I think at Leaf we've built enough of a digital journey that's deep enough for a customer to provide us some answers to some certain questions, and we can determine whether he is credit eligible or no within a 10-minute sort of a framework, right? With regards to going as deep as which city, what zone, what area do you live in, and on the basis of that, are you eligible for lending with any of the lenders who are partnered with us, right? So I think technology has definitely helped in determining availability in housing finance, right? I think the second question of whether it comes at a right price, right? I think that also technology has helped, right? As a tech platform, we partner with multiple lenders, and while some customers may not be as sensitive to the cost of capital or the rate at which they are taking a loan, simply because they are aware that there may be some sort of a deficiency in the collateral, or there may not be a lot of supply available to fund something like this. But those customers that would like to be picky on rate and get a better pricing also have the option to evaluate and discuss with multiple lenders through technology and see what lender fits best for them. Sometimes there may be other compromises, right? If you want a longer tenor and a lower EMI, maybe you're willing to pay a slightly different rate, or you're willing to do a slightly different sort of a loan structure. So I think technology gives customers the flexibility to kind of play around with that as well, right? On the third front, right, while it may have definitely helped a lot, and I think responses from others will be different, I feel because of the lack of data and digital enablement on land records, etc. I think the timely service of credit has not been helped much in affordable mortgages by technology yet, but I think that will also change over a period of time.
Amazing validation of the work which is happening in the industry. So now we would want to put it to Mr. Prem Kumar in the context that where he is handling the whole spectrum of the retail ecosystem. Has he seen it happening both Prem Kumar in the same format, access, cost, and also timeliness of credit?
Actually, it's very interesting, right? You're talking about three key dimensions: cost, timeliness, and reach or penetration, right? Tech and data has created a massive paradigm shift in this, or just as I have seen it in the last couple of years itself, right? I came back to the country about 5-6 years back and I started this, but I have seen a paradigm shift. Now, let me take an example of cost, right? Today, all lending is about the arbitrage between the lender and the borrower and the cost of capital to the lender and the borrower, right? We don't run a book by ourselves. We facilitate people run their books, right? So if you look at it, what happens is the true beneficiary of a loan to a merchant, like a grocery merchant, is actually a marketeer for whom you have created purchasing power, right? Now, what it means to the marketeer is not financial services. What does he want? He wants his must to have SKUs, 6 of them in the shop, 24/7, 365, on which he spends 6 to 7% of his sales, right? Now, and if you can go around and tell him that, look, these are the 6 products that you should be having in this particular store, because I know enough about the store, I can guarantee you the presence of this product 24/7, 365 in that store. Now you are solving a 6% of sales problem, right? And I mean, there should not be a resistance to part on 0.5% out of that to downstream, right? So this disrupts cost dramatically. Or take, for example, the Kata book that all merchants run, right? Roughly 50% of the retailers have a Kata book, 30-40% of their sales is on Kata book. We have a few hundred crores on Kata books in our books, in the system. Now, if you look at the records of these merchants, of these katas, they are high quality katas, because most of these katas are convenience katas. It's not that the borrower who took the kata took it for lack of money, as much as he wanted his driver to pick up the grocery when he just picked up the phone and told him that, right? Now, the discounting of that kata is because of the quality of the data that you now have about that kata and who that kata belongs to. The cost at which you can discount that kata is a disruption, right? So it's creating a massive difference in the cost of capital, because you're capturing a discount. It may not be directly in the interest rate. It could be 0.5% extra discount on the purchase, but it all tantamounts to a disruption in the cost of capital to the lender and the borrower, right? In terms of reach, I think there is no way that this kind of a reach could have achieved barring data and technology. I mean, today you are activating stores based on the historical data or on the purchase data of the transaction that is happening over the last 6 months, or the payment records, and then extrapolating it. And you're also integrating now because of the data connectivity and the networking that you have created. A distributor can recommend a retailer for a loan and take a little bit of a first loss because he knows the history of that retailer for a long time, right? Any good distributor has about 3 weeks of out debtor ledger, right? 150 crore distributor per month will have 130 crore debtor ledger. But if you look at it, the bad debts are practically nil. So somebody knows how to give money and collect money, except that the organized sector is just about beginning to sort of understand it better. So I think this has made a huge difference in the cost of capital, B, the reach of this capital to multiple people, both whether it's merchants or consumers, upstream or downstream, and the ability to give it when it is needed. And that's most important, right? From lending to when you need it, you need it. I mean, people who take, say, let's say I've got 20 bills to pay, I've got money to pay 5, I'll delay another 5, but I need money for the next 5, that 5, right? I just pull it and drop it into a bucket to get a buy now, pay later product for that, right? So I think that none of this would have happened barring the fact that you have a digital highway which has been created for goods and money, and you have data that is backing up that highway. And that's what is creating this disruption in cost, disruption in reach, and disruption in the ability to be timely, here and now kind of ability to render that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have also seen the negotiation even in a small loan segments and all also being driven by the partnership, because the data driven journey is always also about the partner. The partners are really large partners. The partners are like the behemoths in retail lending. In retail platform companies or consumer platform companies and all, and they have also been negotiating on behalf of the customers to ensure that the pricing is right as far as the end user is concerned itself. So yeah, the cost advantage is definitely moving to the consumers, and particularly when you do see organizations coming on P2P platforms where individuals are directly able to lend and all, and the cost of borrowing in those kind of ecosystem dropping all of a sudden to 10% for individuals, and those individuals are just an individual. It's not like a classically category A kind of individuals in a banking parlance. So yeah, the institutions, the relationship or partner players are also negotiating on behalf of on the consumers to keep it right. This thing. Looking at the same dimensions, Dr. Neeraj, how have you seen the health tech or financing the healthcare facility or healthcare need itself is concerned? How have you seen this this evolving or benefiting the consumer?
No, absolutely. I mean, taking a cue from what you just mentioned, Satyam, where institutions are actually negotiating with financing partners on behalf of the customers. I mean, that is exactly what is started in the health tech side, and especially COVID has accelerated for various companies to do it. So now, what you see is large institutions actually talking to financing partners and negotiating the cost of finance and treatment per se for the end customer on various planned treatments which a customer needs to do. And that's where financing those customers also becomes really feasible for lending institutions at the end of the day. And that is something which is really benefiting the customers. But on a larger piece, for institutions to actually underwrite the risk for customers on the health side, that's still largely a big challenge yet to be solved, because of, again, the lack of pipes available for the data, and the data that's being collected is, again, from a percentage point of view, I would say institutionalized data collection is hardly under 20%, and that too purely governed on the insurance sector, which is what is making the institutions and large hospitals to actually collect, store, process data, because it's a payer driven approach, right? But on the larger fragmented market, data collection is still a very, very big problem and a complex problem to be solved. And that's where the earlier point from the previous question that was mentioned, how do you really bring, and how does financial institution bring in rewards to introduce that as a behavior queue for data collection, both on the provider as well as the customer side. Somebody has to initiate, somebody has to collect, and there has to be a reward available there, which will actually induce the behavior queue. And how do you actually do that?
Great. Amazing insights, Dr. Neeraj. Yeah, Ankit, I would narrow down the question a bit for your round, because and maybe push a bit more for you, because you are working in a end-to-end or partial digital environment as far as enabling the customer's journey itself is concerned for taking the loan or taking these things. You would have a very deep view of distribution itself. So are you seeing distribution pattern decisively different when it comes to a fintech and when it comes to a banking partner? So you are handling both kind of stuff. So our fintechs or neobanks are really providing the distribution what we are seeing significantly different than a traditional distribution or a traditional availability of the loan. Since we have very few questions on the board, or so we can use the time to get deeper insight from you on what fintechs are bringing to the table or new banks are bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think again it's a very good question, and I think a question which is not just of today, that what is today, what I think it's a question of what is happening tomorrow. So I think there is clearly a large enough digital world today, which means what? That unlike physical world, you had a bank branch, and let's say you had a mall, you had a shop for buying car, and so you used to go to a shop for buying a car, you used to go to a bank branch for buying a home loan. Increasingly, and of course even there real estate was priced, but in digital world, attention of consumer, which is the true real estate, is actually 10x more pricey. So what financial services are realizing in a big way is that getting consumer attention in digital world, being able to cut through the noise and reach the consumer in the digital world, is close to impossible, because you have no way to engage, you have no way to be on his top of the mind. So the only time that I may actually know about you is when I'm looking for a product. By that time, it's too late. You are no longer engaged. You are no longer part of the distribution cycle. So the hard lesson financial services are learning, that in digital world, distribution will not be there to have. Like, they will not be able to have distribution. Yes, of course, big banks are trying to build their own e-commerce and all, but I don't think anyone is truly serious about it. I think everyone does understand that distribution in digital world will not be available to banks at all. I think what they will need to get really, really good at is being able to underwrite some of these distribution platforms, like as Prem sir, pointed out, right? So there should be understanding of these distribution systems. How do they work? As a bank, I'll have to become a little bit like a VC investor in some ways, and say, this is a good product. Consumers here are coming of a certain kind. This data is of a certain kind, and kind of bring that aspect into my banking. But having said that, world will not just be digital. Yes, there will of course be physical world. There, I think banks should be able to catch up with the startups. So if there is good salesperson technology today with a startup, and they're doing really well because their app works really, really well, their salesperson is really consumer focused, there I think banks do have still a possibility of winning that battle. They can invest in technology, they can invest in people, they can change their culture. Like, I think the biggest thing they'll have to change is become very consumer focused versus regulatory or process focused. So there's still some part of the pie they can take in physical world. I guess there can be bank can still be distribution, but fintechs will be the distribution layer. The reason why they are winning is because they understand this distribution ecosystem. So Khata Book, I'm sure, is not working with any bank, to be like honest about it, because banks don't understand you. So therefore, fintechs have this huge advantage, or lending fintechs have this huge advantage, where they are being able to service these needs of digital ecosystem. Banks, they have to get good. There is no option. Like you will not be the distribution channel in digital. Like there's no way. So that is what I think is the futuristic plan today. Whatever maybe, I think that is how I see the world getting divided.
So, Ankit, on the same stuff, a bit, maybe one more minute from you in the distribution or the product category wise. And the second is there a geographical reach which is different in the fintech ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally also, I think NBFCs have had a geographical niche advantage over banks, that some NBFC, some chit fund, like there would have always been financial products banks haven't reached and geographically have reached. I think I won't call those companies fintechs, to be very frank. I mean, they may be more digital savvy NBFCs playing the same category advantage as previous categories. Like I'm an NBFC who's very good at shoe market lending. So I mean, those truly are NBFCs, maybe more tech savvy. They're truly NBFCs. I think what I will classify fintech is somebody who has reached to any consumer with an internet, and there I don't see anything geographical at all. The only, I think, geographical aspect is collection, which also I think will become like US, where collection is outsourced surveys. You have enough collection agencies across the country, and then you're relying on these specialized collection agencies to do collection. So you no longer have to build a strong collection workforce. And as a bank, I think banks will need to become very, very lean, right? So they'll need to outsource more and more parts of their business and go to core of what is banking, which is taking risk-based decisions, saying this is a good portfolio, this is a bad portfolio, versus trying to be best at collections, best at distribution. I think all of that will not work.
Amazing. So what we are saying is that the banks should go back to the banking about taking risk, mobilizing resources, mobilizing capital, providing capital, managing money, and allow the user experience, allow the parts and parcels to be handled by. Allow it to be created in a different set of expertise and with a different set of stuff. So what we have also seen of late, as far as the distribution itself is concerned, in the ecosystem is just to try to bring a conclusion as we are coming to an end of the session, is that what we have seen is that now even organizations, like if we are talking of electric two-wheelers, then we are seeing that there's a decisive shift in the government think tank, government policy making itself, that if this distribution has to come, it will come by and large by the tech-led players, which is what we are seeing. Even if there is an NBFC, there is a degree of a fintech, there is a layer of a fintech which is allowing it to go slightly deeper. So what we are seeing is very definite differentiated distribution. So there is a bank distribution network, where still you are seeing the same set of customers, same dimensions being catered to, similar product categories being pushed, and at the same time you are seeing a whole lot of a new set of consumers, be it they are coming as on the big billion day sale day, or whether they are coming on any other day. So a whole new set of a customer who are getting coming into the system, whether they have a bureau or whether they do not have a bureau, and all kind of customers are coming, and this differentiation or distributed distribution, differentiated distribution is what keeping the fintechs and neo banks far ahead in this game of future. That is what this segment Ankit tried to give a color to. So we are seeing the data quality itself has improved dramatically, and it continues to improve, which is allowing organization after organizations to bring, from the user point of view, better access to credit, lower cost of credit, and also timeliness of the credit. So I think this is a good thought to close the session with, and I'm sure now towards the end of the session, Ashit, we welcome you, and subsequently also I think Kiki Mehta to come.
Thank you very much, Satyam, and the panelists, all of you. Thank you very much for your valued thoughts. Really appreciate the direction in which the digitization, the capability of usage of data, and the usefulness to the borrower and the lender, which has been discussed here. But all the three sectors the SME side, the affordable housing side, and the healthcare side. And Ankit, thank you for you creating a pipe in between that how the digitization will work, and what are the nuances in bringing those data to the right player at the right time, and accessibility and capability to understand them better. So thank you very much, all of you. Will request the people to take you all to the backstage while I welcome Ms. Pinky Mehta, who is the Chief Financial Officer at Birla Sun Life
Thank you.
Insurance, and who is going to give us the vote of thanks. Pinky, please welcome Pinky on the stage.
To correct that, I am a Chief Financial Officer of Aditya Birla Capital Limited and the Director.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
It
sorry.
doesn't matter. So last 2 days, we had interesting panel discussions with all the industry stalwarts on the frictionless service and the delightful customer experience in BFSI sector. Times have changed, and digital technology and the fintechs have disrupted the traditional way of doing business. Companies are compelled to look into the new ways of doing business. This has become all the more necessary because of ongoing pandemic COVID-19. Business needs to leverage technology to drive resource, reduce cost, improve customers' experience, makes frictionless customer journey, offer innovative and customized products to the customers, and build a robust platform that supports growth. Today, data is critical to enable better decisions making, and one needs to invest in data analytics to acquire more customers and understand the customers' needs in a better way. Today's generation is tech savvy and happy to do business digitally. It is a need of an hour to collaborate with e-commerce and fintech partners for sourcing customers, onboarding them, enriching the customer's experience for transactions and servicing them. I am thankful to Bombay Chamber full team under Mr. Sandeep Khosla's leadership for their hard work in making this conclave successful. I am thankful to all my panel speakers, participants, Tata Investment, Kotak Mahindra, Cosmic Mandela 15 Group, and Nicam Solutions for being partner in our journey. And not least the last, the Judicial support to Sumitra and Jimit for giving this technology platform that everybody could have a seamless, the journey and attend the conference well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it.